what's up you guys, my name is RWBY and welcome back to LEGO Arts. So, in the last episode, we began the RWBY Volume 7 showcase with Part 1 featuring Team RWBY. So now this time we're going to continue on with Part 2 with Team JNOR. So here we have Jean, Oscar, Wren, and Nora, all of which in their new outfits, and turned out really cool. So, originally, these figures, as well as Part 3, were supposed to be done all at the same time with Part 1, but it came to a point where it was sort of, it became like on again, off again work between this one, as well as with Showdown Bandit Wave 2, and I finally figured out that, like, the whole showcase in general is going to be super long, so I'll divide them up into three parts. So, Part 1 was Team RWBY, and Part 2 is Team JNOR. I don't know what to call Part 3, but they will be featuring the final showcases for RWBY Volume 7. And then afterwards, we'll finally get down to Showdown Bandit. So throughout this week, I know I said I was originally going to record Boris and the Dark Survival, but after playing a little bit of it, there's currently not a whole lot to cover about the game. It's pretty simple. It is simple. You just go around the studio, you collect supplies, evade Bendy. You can find, like, secret Easter eggs, as well as audio logs, and collect scraps to form Boris's collage. They said they're going to do more updates in the future, but at the moment right now, I feel like there's not a whole lot to cover around for, like, a Let's Play series. So, maybe I'll go back to that game, and do, like, at least one video on it, but I finally decided that, like, you know what, screw it. I want to sit down, I want to finish these figures up, and get around to going back to doing custom minifigures. So I finally did, and with the final results, I am very satisfied with. So, as you guys know the whole drill, we're going to take these minifigures one at a time, do a review of them, explain my process, why I went this route, and then go from there. And before I continue on, I finally figured out what I did with the first RWBY minifigure. So, I repainted her hairpiece, as well as redoing the highlights, and now this looks much more accurate to how she is on the show, so I'm much more satisfied. So, without further ado, let's get the pedestal out and get the showcase on the road. So to start our showcase off is Jean. Now, this was sort of an interesting approach with all of these other characters, because I haven't done any other RWBY characters aside from Team RWBY. So, one of the first priorities that I had to do was figure out how to build this character. First, and for the first time. So, after looking at some screenshots of his character model, I finally decided to go with hand painting the entire figure and applying some 3D elements. So with the same technique that I did for Iron Man Mark 85 from Avengers Endgame, I added some clay on his chest, also on his shoulders, to give it sort of that 3D effect. As you can see, he's got a little pocket on the back, and this fabric is supposed to represent sort of like his waist belt that he has on there. It was supposed to be a little bit bigger, and I was playing with the idea of maybe making the whole thing three-dimensional, but I figured that looked too big and too clunky, so I decided to just scrap it and just go ahead with a standard, like, just some good old paint, and as you can see, it continues on the back with some belt straps that go all around the leg. The legs I chose as a regular like navy blue, like they started out as the regular navy blue color, so that way it'd be easier, so like if I wanted articulation in the legs, the paint wouldn't chip off too much, and also the paint wouldn't look like too big or too thick. So this way it would make it all look nice and smooth, and it would save some time of focusing on the boots as well as the rest of the detailing. So as you can see with the boots, I start off with the brown, and then added in the black, and then with this, I'm not even sure what kind of acrylic pen I used. I think it was kind of like a bronze, coloration that I used, but I added that for like some of the buttons on the belt, as well as the belt buckles, and even the same thing with sort of the outlining for the armor. I will admit, especially for the shoulders, the armor kind of came out a little bit too big, because there's supposed to be like some peach tannish skinish paint like around like the shoulders, but when painting this whole thing, I failed to realize of how much room it all took up. So, as sort of a compromise, I had to scrap that off and just go ahead and paint on the rest of this. So that was a bit of an accident. So, as you can see, there's more detailing on the hands. Like I first painted them brown and added the detailing. The head is actually one of the few like headpieces that I actually used used instead of like a decal base, L base. And I thought this expression kind of fit Jean very well. Well, in fact, this is the most common headpiece that I get whenever I like buy minifigures. So I had a whole bunch of these like lying around. So I decided to take one of the heads, paint the eyes blue, then go back in, add in the little white dots, and this came out pretty nice. I like it. I like it of how it came out. The Knight Sword. I didn't realize that the sword handle is not exactly like how it looks, on the show, but the whole general idea of the sword matches up pretty well. So I decided to go ahead and keep the sword as it was. Plus, I had very few of these kinds of swords, so I didn't want to accidentally ruin it and realize that, like, oh shit, I have to restart all over again. I didn't want to do that. As you can see, like, there's some detailing on his shield. It's the same kind of detailing that he added in around Volume 4. Yeah, Volume 4. I'm actually glad that I double-checked on the shield, because I was going to go, like a plain white shield, and then just adding in his little logo. But when I double-checked, because I remembered that he added some of Pyrrha's armor onto the shield, I double-checked the design, and it was just like, oh, I know what to do. So I went back, did the detailing around there. It probably should have come out in sort of like a darker yellow, like on the show, but I decided to go ahead with the gold, and now that I look at it again, it looks pretty nice. And this is one of those old Lego shields. I don't know if they still make these kinds of shields, or if they decided to replace it all with the shields from Nexo Knights, but I had a few of these lying around, and in general, the whole shape of the shield, I felt like matched up very well with Jean, sort of like with Jean's character. So I decided to go ahead with that, and it looks very good. And then finally, the hairpiece. This is the same hairpiece that I used for Hawkeye, and Nero from Devil May Cry and Avengers Endgame. But like with Hawkeye, I decided to do some sanding on it. So what I did was I took a sander and just sanded the sides of the hair. Same thing on the back. You could see like where I did some of the sanding detailing, and then afterwards I painted the whole thing in. I painted the whole thing yellow, and with the final result, it came out pretty good. I actually like this hairstyle much more than his first one. Like his first hairstyle, it looks cool, but I don't know how I would approach like his old hairstyle. I didn't know, like how would I approach it. Like maybe I could use like like a Luke Skywalker hairpiece, or maybe the same hairpiece that I used for V from DMC5. I wasn't entirely certain of how to approach that, but when he got a haircut in the new hairstyle, I was just like, I got the perfect hairpiece for that. So after a little sanding and some paint job, this came out pretty well. So all in all, as a first time of approaching like some other RWBY characters, I really like how this came out. I know it's not completely as detailed as like he is in the show, but some of those like minor detailings I don't really do so much because they're very tedious and really, really hard to do. But all in all, I think this is a cool turnout of how Jean would come out in minifigure formats. So I'm pretty proud of how this character came out. So next up on our list is Nora. Same thing with Jean. I first had to figure out like how to approach this character, but this one wasn't quite as difficult. So for the decals, and I'll go ahead and remove the hammer. There we go. We'll review that in a little bit. So with the torso decals on the front and back, I actually worked on these around the same time that I did Team RWBY. Same thing with Wren's, because I wanted to get all of that done around the same time. So when drawing this decal out was a little bit difficult. But after getting like sort of a basic idea of what sort of coloration that I had to use, how big it had to be, in the end with the final results, I think this turned out pretty nice. On the front and the back. You can see that on the back, I actually did this like hand drawing because I didn't know how to draw out, how to like digitally draw out her little symbol on the back. So that was something that I decided to go ahead and wait until afterwards. And as you can see, I gave her a fabric skirt glued onto the waist. It was a little bit interesting of how to cut this out. Like you could see of where the end pieces go, but if you look at it in a certain angle, it blends in pretty well. But when cutting this out, this is probably another case for where I could have done, like as I mentioned when I did Weiss's minifigure. This could have been another case for where I could just like do like sort of 2 layers, like 1 layer down here, and then like a little layer over it. Alright, but what I did instead was I just did 1 layer, and then cut out like some of the tips of sort of like where her outfit continues on past the skirt. The detailing on the skirt is not exactly as how it is on the show, and that is mainly because I'm still working on like that really small detailing, like the kind of small detailing that I would need the tiniest brush or the tiniest pen to accomplish that kind of level of detailing. So I'm still practicing in that, but I am getting better. Not a whole lot of like detailing on the sides, like either on the skirts or on the back. Though you can see sort of like my makeshift little symbol of her logo on here. There's also she's also got sort of like her little wing armor piece on the side here, like one of the few 3D elements that I added to this character. I did the same thing with Wren and all, but I'll get to him in a little bit. Like with RWBY, there's supposed to be more detailing on the legs, but again, since the skirt covers it all up, it honestly would have been a waste of time to put in detailing that wouldn't be able to be seen. So I decided to just go ahead and skip it and focus on the rest of it. I also added in some detailing with the black marker. This was very, very well done. Same thing that I did for little hearts down here. And as you can see, like the metal boots, like continue onto the back. You can see like little like small little blotches of the ink marker, and it was mainly because as it turns out that when drawing it on fabrics, it's very rough. So it was a little bit difficult to draw all of this without like small blotches getting off. And I think that'll be another case when we go check out either in RWBY Part 3, or I think in Showdown Man at Wave 2. Anyway, so with the face, I felt like going ahead with sort of like this, or like this little face expression, because it pretty much suits Nora. It's Nora very nicely. The hairpiece, it's not exactly how it looks on the show, but it is a good representation of like Nora's hairstyle. And I purchased this on Firestar Toys. If you guys want to go check them out and want to go check out their website, I'll include it in the link description below. I decided to go ahead with this hairpiece because again, it pretty much represents Nora very nicely. And when looking at it again, I think it turned out pretty nice. So now moving on to her hammer, I'll admit I kind of screwed up. On the hammer, but I didn't realize it until I had completed it. So when going back and forth of this hammer of how to build this thing in the first place, I decided to go ahead with like sort of a regular rod, adding in some clay in between to represent like some of the metal pieces on Nora's hammer. And this way with these like regular areas here, she can grip the hammer without like any paint or worse, clay like peeling off. I've tried sculpting out handles in the past, but none of them have worked, so I didn't want to try that again. With actually one of these brick pieces in here, I actually had to sand off 2 stubs from 2 different pieces, and then took the rod, glued it, sticked it inside this piece, and that way it would all stick together and form pretty much the whole base of the hammer. The main part that I screwed up was the back part. I didn't realize it until I had completed it that I messed up. And one of the things that I messed up with is sort of like, as you can see with these 3 parts here. In my head, it was supposed to be it was like the top part is the longest, then the medium part, and then the short part, sort of like the thruster of the hammer. What I failed to realize was that I screwed up, and it was actually the top was the shortest, this was the medium, and then the bottom was the longest. And I didn't realize that until I had finished sculpting everything out, gluing it all on, and then painting it. And when I realized that, it was just like, God damn it. And it was just like, well, I had already finished the hammer, so might as well keep the whole thing as it was. As you can see, like, I painted on the bottom of the hammer to sort of represent of like the cartridges of the hammer. I know it's not the prettiest It is, but this is the representation of the front of the hammer. I didn't go full on out, like with detailing on like the top and everything, because that would have taken like way too long, and I wanted to get this showcase done like as soon as I could, So I will admit the hammer could have come out a little bit better, like if I knew exactly what I was doing at the time. It could have come out great. But all in all, with the whole figure itself, this turned out pretty nice. And all in all, aside from the few mishaps, I'd say this is a pretty good representation of Nora Valkyrie. But if you want to check out like some more detailing like on this decal as well as Wren's decal, you can check them both out in my DeviantArt page as well as the rest of some of my LEGO Arts decals. Next up on our list is Wren. And so with this character, I actually went ahead and decided to go with like decal base first before adding in the hand painting stuff. And it was mainly because of his outfit design. It would require a lot of detailings to pull off, especially his like little lotus symbol and a symbol on the front here and here. So after looking at it, I immediately went like, okay, before I do any hand painting stuff, I'm gonna have to digitally draw out his torso decal, both front and the back. So I went ahead and did that. And it was a little bit tricky of like making sure like the detailing like sort of matched up around. Like if I had painted like the strap continuing on to the back, it was a bit tricky of matching everything up. But afterwards, a little trial and error, I managed to get it correct. And after printing it off, I glued it on here and actually did some additional painting like with sort of like the pink patches, so that way it would match up with the coloration on the right arm. Now speaking of the right arm, as you can see like this little piece of clay over here, this is supposed to represent the dagger he now keeps on his side here. Right here. I didn't do so much detailing on here, as you can see. And it was mainly because, again, I would need a tiny brush or a really small pen to do that amount of detailing, and I have neither of those. As you can see with the guns, they're not exactly, I will admit, they're not exactly as they look on the show. And it's mainly because I don't have any more of those pistols. Like the same kind of pistol I wanted to use was the same one that I used for Connor, that I used for Jericho Connor from Detroit Become Human. I don't have any of those anymore, but I had plenty of these like Star Wars guns. So I decided to sort of use those, add in like some clay to add in a sort of like the blade part of his guns, paint them up green, except for the handles, because I knew those would get peeled off, and then put those on. So for now, I think we'll call these as sort of temporary guns. I will forge like his actual like pistols in the future, but for now these are going to be sort of temporary. As you can see here, I continued on some detailing like on the sides. Same thing with the boots. I will admit this detailing could have come out much better. And I was originally going to go ahead and use like acrylic pen on this one, but I don't have a light gray. I have a regular gray that turns out as a dark gray, but I don't have sort of like this light gray, pattern that he has, that was shown on the show. So that was a bit of an oops. I will admit that. And I don't know how well you could see it, but there's a little bit of sort of like faded lines on his pants. That was not intentional, actually. I was supposed to have like a Sharpie and then like draw it in, but for some reason the ink didn't come out, and instead it came out looking like this and like this. But in the end, I finally decided that like, you know what, I can actually keep it, because as the lines on the pants do kind of fade a little bit, so I decided to go ahead and keep it. Moving on with the headpiece. With the head decal to use, like with the same technique that I had used for Captain America, and my updated Captain America, I took a photo of one of my Jay from Lego Ninjago minifigures, because I felt like the facial expression matched up pretty well. So I took a picture of it, cropped it, recolored it, and redid some of it, and then this turned out to be the final results. I will admit, the mouth and the eyebrows could have come out a little bit better, but for some reason the printer decided to fade them out, so I had to go ahead and redraw them in. them in. So that was a bit of a bum. But when looking at it again, it still looks pretty nice. But the hairpiece, I decided to use this spare hairpiece that I had from a Harry Potter minifigure that I have. I decided to go ahead and use that hairpiece because I felt that this design matched up with Wren's, except for the braid. So like with Black Widow from Endgame, I decided to sculpt the braid on the back, measure it out to just about the bottom of the waist. I then super glued it on here, though you can see it's slightly loose, but it's not too bad. I then went back and added in like the pink, sort of these pink hairbands up here, and then all the way down here at the bottom. Then repainted this whole thing in black, give it a new fresh coat of paint, and then last but not least, added in this little pink streak, his pink streak that he has in the front, of the hairpiece. So in comparison with the other ones, I think this one was probably one of the easier ones to do, because it wasn't too overly complicated, and after figuring out a few bits of it, it was pretty easy, especially of having to do like this arm, and then figuring out like what sort of path that I wanted to go for the legs. If I had a smaller brush or a marker, I could have drawn in more detailing on the side of his little dagger. But all in all, I think this was a pretty cool approach. A pretty cool approach to Wren. So I'm pretty proud of how this came out. So last on our list is Oscar. Now, I'll admit, when making this character, I was sort of coming up with the ideas as I was building it. Like, at least with the other characters, I had sort of a general idea of how I wanted to approach this. But with this one, I kept jumping back and forth of how I wanted to make him. So one of the first things that I did was his decal. It was sort of like his face decal. I'll admit, I don't know if I have the correct skin tone. I don't know, because as I kept seeing multiple different photos of Oscar, and all of which they had different, like, sort of skin tones. Some of them were lighter, some of them were darker. I had no idea, like, which one was the best one to approach. So it came to a point where I just sort of like made my own skin tone and painted around the face, and then like redid the freckles. So if I got this right, that's right, cool. If I didn't, I apologize. But one of the things that I sort of made this unique is his eyes. I don't know if you can fully see it, but it's actually two different colors. Because as one of the plus sides about some of those screenshots I kept seeing was Oscar's eyes. They're kind of a hazel, like sort of a hazel color. But when looking at it again, it was sort of like a mix between like orange and green, sort of like an orange and green kind of coloration. So I decided to mix the two together, do sort of like a blur setting to sort of like blend them in together, and then with the final result, it turned out looking pretty cool. Looking pretty cool. I'm sorry if you can't fully see it because of how small it is. But I'm pretty satisfied with how it came out. It looked pretty nice. So on to the rest of the figure. As I mentioned, it was sort of I was coming up with the ideas as I was making this. Like, for starters of his torso, I decided to, I can't remove the jacket, but underneath the torso, I decided to add in like his shirt that he wears, including painting on the belt buckle and this little button you can see. I did the detailing in Sharpie. Because I was a little afraid that the marker would come out a bit too big, so I decided to start off with Sharpie, and since I won't be, and this way it can all like work in well together. Also with the jackets, I decided to go ahead and give him a trench coat because I actually haven't done that with any of the RWBY characters. So I decided to add some 3D elements on that. So added in like the insides of the jacket. Of the insides of the trench coat on the outside, and then with this fabric belts, I was originally going to do like the masking tape belts that I had done beforehand, but I had some of this extra fabric, and I decided that like, how about we try that and see how that turns out. It's not exactly how I imagined it, but it is a good representation nonetheless. I also adding in like another part of the belts on the back. You can see a little bit of detailing on the back. This was actually difficult to get right. Not because I wasn't using a marker, but because as when doing like some paint detailing on that, drawing the outline first and then filling it in, it was a bit trickier than I expected. But after drawing that out, I then painted it up with this crimson red, coloration leading up to the front of the trench coat. Also with this hairpiece. I don't know like what particular minifigure it goes to, but the design of the hairpiece I felt was just about closest to Oscar's on the show, so I decided to go ahead and use that one. He's got painted orange hands for his gloves. I will admit, there is supposed to be like some skin coloration on here, but again, I didn't know the skin tone, and also I had painted the head before I did the rest of the figure, so I had no idea what colors I used exactly. To create the same skin tone, and I didn't want to repeat Rodan from Godzilla, of where like I have two different colors, like one side's lighter and one side's darker than the other one. So I didn't want to repeat that. So I decided to just go ahead and add in like the rest of the detailing on the arms. There is some slight articulation, but not too much of it, and it's mainly because of the coat. And you can also see like little three-dimensional pockets. This one I actually had to replace because the original one fell off. I have no idea where it went. But I had to redo it. Luckily, the back stayed intact, and I thought I had to add like a little outlining, but turns out nope. All I had to do was just add in a little button. I don't know if the trench coat itself, like cutting up a little bit of it, was a bit of a pain, because like when gluing it all on, sometimes it's all working well together. Other times, one side's longer than the other one, and when I try to even it out, it ends up looking worse. So this was just about the best I could come up with. On the sides, it looks weird, but on the front and back, it looks normal. So I'll take what I can get. And also, so with his trusty cane, as you can see, I used a Star Wars like lightsaber handle piece that I had lying around. I also added in like one of these rod pieces on the front, on like the top part of it. I was originally just gonna go ahead with like a regular rod and stick it in like one of these sockets, but then I thought that like I wanna like actually add some more into it. So I took like one of these other rods that had a connector piece on the end, stuck it on, and then super glued on this little handle piece that he has on the show, and then painted this bottom parts and the handle up into a gray. I know it looks slightly lighter, but this was the closest I could get for all of this matching up a little bit well. And these little gold pieces like on the sides are supposed to represent like the gear pieces on his cane, like, and like if I had the smaller brush as well as the marker, I would do like more detailing on this, and I'll talk about that more when I get to around Crow in part three for the showcase. Okay, but all in all, this was a pretty interesting approach of how to do Oscar. Like this was one of the few RWBY minifigures that I did for where my mind just went for it. Like the other ones, they had some form of an idea. Like I had some form of an idea before executing it. With this one, I just sort of let my imagination just go off on its own. And with the final results, there are a couple of changes that I'd like to make, but overall, I'd say this turned out as a pretty cool build. So that does it for this episode of LEGO Arts, and that does it for part 2 of RWBY Volume 7. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Sorry this part was sort of delayed a little bit more. My original plan was to get all the RWBY minifigures done as soon as possible, and then do the showcases in parts like that. But then I realized that would have taken way too long to do all of that. So I realized that, like, okay, I'll just focus on like one part at a time, focus on the minifigures at that part, and then when I'm finished with that, can go back, finish up the rest, and then do the parts like that. And it also gave me enough time to finally put the finishing touches on Showdown Bandit Wave 2. So in the end, it all came out pretty well, and I'm really looking forward to it. So next episode is going to be part 3 of RWBY Volume 7, and then after that, we're finally going to be doing Showdown Bandit Wave 2. So be sure to keep your eyes and ears peeled out for that. Yeah, peel out for that. Also, with some other showcases in the future, I have plans to do two more other showcases, such as Umbrella Academy and the first wave of Bendy and the Dark Revival. I don't know when those will be. Done, but I'll begin working on those after I finish after the showcase for Shadow Man Wave 2. So, anyways, if you guys would like to see more videos like this in the future, be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. It really helps us work on less ways, like our products. I really have some fun. So, anywho, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, hit that like button, comment below what you think, share with your friends, subscribe to YouTube, follow me on Twitch. And here's the top of the road. Ow! Woo! Thank you guys, and we'll see you next time. What do you guys, Moonrises?